My name is Janelle Gray, and I am an author. Now I can say I'm an author. I started writing poetry when I was 11, and so about 2 years ago now, I released a book of poetry called Mosaic, Pieces of Poetry, and now I guess I'm officially a fiction writer. Without giving away too much, Echoes of the Struggle is really about overall it's the civil rights movement, and the idea is that the civil rights movement hasn't ended. Usually we talk about the civil rights movement and we relegate it to like a decade of time between the 50s and 60s, and so Echoes of the Struggle is really about that struggle in the 60s and how it continues even today. There are lots of characters in the books. I think that there are a lot of different characters. The main character, Daniela, is a black woman. She was raised almost hippie-like. Her parents are very liberal, but they're also very aware of their history. And so she's raised with the knowledge of the civil rights struggle, of the civil rights movement. And I think, if I'm honest, she's very arrogant about what she knows of the civil rights movement. She knows, who Rosa Parks is, who Martin Luther King is, like everybody does. And she even knows a step further. She's watched Roots and Queen and read the books and Hattie McDaniel. She knows all these people, and because she knows more than the average person, she's very arrogant. And so she goes on a civil rights tour and finds out when she goes on the tour, she's not really thinking she's going to learn anything. But when she goes on the tour, she finds out that she really has no idea the full story of the movement that happened. About 4 years ago, I went on a civil rights tour, and that's kind of where the book came from. I went on a tour with Southern Methodist University in Dallas, and much like the character, I was very arrogant, and my parents did teach me a lot about the civil rights movement. I was required to do book reports on black figures in history that you wouldn't find in school. So they were very instrumental in teaching me about the history and its importance. But even then, much like my character, when I went on this tour, I was like, oh wow. And it's very different to hear it from the people who were there. And I think that was the thing for me, is I heard these stories from people who were physically at the bridge in Selma, these people who were physically in that particular city, and they experienced the things that you read about. And so it's a completely different experience to hear it from their mouths. And so I try to capture that in the book so that you hear their speeches. Because the saying that says that if you're not aware of your history, you're doomed to repeat it, that's essentially what happens. And for me, for example, in the book, most of Daniela's big struggle happens after the death of a black boy in her community, and he is wrongfully killed. He's killed by an off-duty officer, and because of that, it kind of shakes her world. She's very comfortable. She's always had money. She's not really been touched by a lot of racism. Like, she knows it's there. She feels it. She recognizes it, but it's not something that pains her the way that it does in other situations, or for other people rather, which she meets other people where it does pain them in that way. And because she's so separate from it, it doesn't touch her the same way. And I think a lot of people right now are doing that because we have been raised in a world where it wasn't uncommon for me to have white friends or Hispanic friends or Asian friends. Like, that's not uncommon. And because it's not uncommon, we don't readily see the problems that we're faced with. And if we don't see the problems, we can't fight them. So I think that's why it's super important, is to be aware of what's around you. I think the most important is that some kind of way we've decided that everybody has their own struggle and we have to fight everybody's own struggle. And that's really dumb. When you think about it, there is a Black struggle, and it's very different from other struggles. There's a history there that makes it different. But I would say fundamentally, the struggle is the same. It's all about equality. It's the way people are treated or mistreated. And so for some reason we've separated each struggle. And then we have to say, well, no, this struggle is different, so we have to fight it differently. And that's not always the case. Like, obviously there are differences, but that's not always the case. And so I think we have to learn to fight together each individual battle. Like, I think if instead of Black people fighting the Black struggle becomes people fighting the Black struggle, it becomes better.
Okay.
I think the biggest takeaway from the book is purpose. I want the reader to walk away with an understanding of the fact that there's history that they don't know. I want them to research the history that they don't know, and I want them to try and apply it to the world today, because there are so many things that are really mirrored in our community today. A lot of the unrest, racial inequalities, a lot of things that have happened in the past are mirrored, and maybe in a different way. Maybe it's called something different. It just looks a little different, but if you know the history and you start looking at the history, it's really no different at all. And for us to claim that as a community, as a nation, we have come so far, a lot of times that's not even a portion of accurate. So I want people to walk away with purpose, and that I know that there are parallels. And my job, my purpose, is to find these inequalities and eradicate them. And that can look different. For me, when I walked away, my purpose was to write a book, to open people's eyes, and that's my contribution. So I want people to walk away with, I have a purpose. Now I have to find out how to employ it. People will be able to find the book on Amazon.com. There will be plenty of places, and I'll make sure I post that, but primarily on Amazon.com. Hopefully January 2017.